It's time for the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth, financial literacy educator and speaker, entrepreneur, and chairman of the board of a Bank Information. Take charge of your financial future with Your Personal Bank. Now here's Ference Toth.
Welcome to the Your Personal Bank Show, and today we have a very special guest, Bob Wheeler. And I invited Bob to join our program because I think he has a unique perspective on money. And what I mean by that is, I guess you might say Bob is kind of like a comedian. He actually owns the Comedy Store in L.A. But Bob, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's great to be here. I'm super excited. And I wish I could say I own the Comedy Store. I'm CFO. But,
CFO. Okay.
Very involved with the store. Been there 25 years. So
there you go. And as many of the listeners know, I talk a lot about financial literacy. I've taught that myself. Relationships with money. It's the emotions involved with money. It's very powerful, and I think Bob has some unique insights on that. So I'm just going to kind of let you get started here and tell us a little bit about yourself, Bob, and kind of how you got into this this niche, I guess you would say.
Yeah, absolutely. So, originally I was all set to be a lawyer. That's what I had planned on doing since I was a kid. Doing pre-law, taking accounting just to help my grade point average, like everybody else, right? A little accounting to help boost the grades. Mm-hmm. And accounting was just something that came easy for me. And as I was going through school, I realized I didn't like many of the lawyers that I met, and I decided that I would go into accounting. And I got my CPA license. I did not have healthy modeling around money when I was a kid. No blame there. That's just the reality because most of us don't.
Right.
And what I discovered was, at the same time I was giving people really great practical advice, I wasn't following my own rules because I had excuses and I had a mindset that I was the exception to the rule. And so as I started looking at my money beliefs and money blocks, and I was doing my own personal work, and my clients were turning tax sessions into therapy sessions, started to realize, hey, something's going on here. At the same time, because I work with a lot of creative folks, I was doing stand-up comedy. My friends were all in entertainment. They had all this shame around money and feeling very alone. And I realized, oh, my gosh, we just don't have conversations about money and our mindsets. We're just not running around telling everybody about our debt and how we just overdrew the account again or didn't pay the mortgage. We keep all that to ourselves. And I realized I just wanted to start conversations around money so that we could all start to, make it demonster the topic.
Yeah, it's that like, one of those things, never talk about, money, politics, things like that, right? Religion. It's off
Absolutely.
topic. Yeah. Taboo.
Taboo.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think it's funny because you bring that up because I've been in the financial business 22 years working with clients, and when I first met my wife, she's a social worker with a postmaster's degree in human behavior, and she was shocked when she, came with me. I used to travel and meet with clients often, and she came with me, and how, like you said, so many of these meetings with clients would turn into more of a therapy session than products, right? Because I had to deal with the emotions and of money that these people had. I had to get them through that to help them make better decisions. So it's very common.
Yeah, and what's interesting, I find, is a lot of people are very unaware of it, very unconscious that they've got these beliefs going on, and until we deal with those, it's really hard to move forward with the practical advice when you're operating from an invisible mindset.
So, Bob, what would you recommend to somebody who, we have a lot of investors, obviously listen to the radio show and stuff like that, and like you said, have many invisible blind spots. What would you recommend to somebody like that to maybe help them become aware of that?
Well, I think the first thing is to, know thyself, get a little bit curious, and when I'm investing, what are the fears that are going to be there? Am I hoping to get rich quickly? What am I hoping to attain from this investment? What's my worst fear that could be realized? Really start to check in with all of that stuff because, as you know, the market is certainly driven by emotions.
Fear and greed, exactly.
People are like, oh, my God, I'm going to lose my money. I got to sell. No, stay in, right?
Right.
It's all emotional. And to just get really aware of the trigger points so that you can actually learn to just take a breath and take a pause before reacting to the situation, being able to assess the situation.
And I would guess that, like your book, The Money Nerve, Navigating the Emotions of Money, would be a good place to start, right?
It's a great place to start. That is a great book, actually, for couples, because there are a lot of calls to action at the end of each chapter, and it really gives you a chance to know your partner, know your spouse, and find out what each triggers for each of you are. Because, I was doing this workshop, and I was working with people on budgets, and I asked everybody to go home and talk to their spouse or their partner or their kids, whoever they were living with, and get some feedback on the budget. And this gentleman was in his second marriage. He was in his 50s. He came back the next week. He's like, I got to share. He was almost in tears. And I said, share. And he said, well, I did what you said. I went back and I asked my wife about the budget. And she said to me, thank you for finally letting me into the marriage. And he realized he had put all his projections on his first wife onto his second wife and hadn't bothered to get curious. And so it really changed his relationship with her, because he decided to engage with her and instead of hiding the financial situation from her.
Right. And that brings up the point I run into so often. Like, you'll have a couple, like you said, and you know what I'm talking about, and the husband, it's often the husband that'll say, we don't need to talk to her. I handle the money.
That's right. And then what happens when they disappear, right? And then she's left in the dark.
What that tells me, at least, again, I've got over 20 years experience in this, learned that, that means I need, all the more important, I need to talk to the wife also.
Absolutely. Keep her in the loop, for sure. Yeah, it's so interesting, though, where, again, even gender comes into play, where some men will say, well, I'm in charge and I've got to figure this out and I've got to be the breadwinner, because maybe that's what they were socialized to believe.
Right.
Or it may be the woman that has said, you know what, I got to handle this.
Yeah, it's so funny, and so when I run into those situations, or like I said, the other one, well, I'll have maybe the husband and wife is there, but the wife really doesn't want to be involved, and I have to kind of like get her to sit down and say, look, I get you don't really care about money that much, but you should have at least a basic understanding, because this affects you too.
Absolutely.
What do you recommend to, like, it's not always the wife, but more often than not, the wife who's more reluctant, they don't really want to deal with it?
Well, I let them know you've got to be able to be the captain of your own ship as well, and you need to be in the driver's seat in case somebody else can't drive. You need to know this information. And I tell this to business owners as well that don't want to know about stuff. They're like, I don't do the finance stuff. You have to know at least the basics, I feel like. Even if you don't fully know it, know enough to fake out the other people so that they can't take advantage of you. Learn to use some key words and actually learn to understand how to read a financial statement and get familiar a little bit with what a budget is. Doesn't mean you have to be an expert at it.
Right. Yeah, I have a perfect analogy with a client literally this morning he's a pilot. He's a commercial pilot, and we were setting up a new account, some new stuff, and I said, and he was asking some questions, and I said, don't apologize. You're not going to be an expert, but I want you to at least be able to land the plane in an emergency. And he kind of laughed.
That's exactly right. You want to be able to land that financial plane.
Right.
In an emergency.
He loved that analogy, and it just clicked. So, also, if somebody's wanting to learn more, they liking some of this information you're sharing, you do a weekly podcast also, I understand, Bob. Is that right?
Absolutely. We do. We have a podcast called Money You Should Ask. Sort of like Funny You Should Ask. Money You Should Ask. And we have a lot of amazing people on that show. And these are people that have had huge success, that share their failures. They share their blind spots. They share the places where they made huge miscalculations. And what I find refreshing about that is I talk to people with, billions of dollars in their bank accounts, and they're sharing stories that are so relatable because we've all done it. We're all just people at the end of the day. The amount of money we have doesn't define us as human beings. And so being able to talk with people that have had great success but that will share their failures, that's just so, for me, comforting.
Right.
to know that, oh, okay, I made that same mistake, right? I've made lots of mistakes.
Sure.
And being able to talk about that stuff, I think actually gives people comfort. A lot of my clients will come in and say, I know you're going to judge me. I know you must hate me. I'm the worst client ever. And I'll say, the reason I can sit here and have compassion is because I've made some of the same mistakes.
Right.
I'm not better than you. I just learned a couple things a little bit quicker. So.
Yeah, and I hear the same stories over. And when I used to speak or before COVID, I used to travel the country and speak and do workshops. And I would say, one of the first things I say is, look, if the person you're listening to tells you they've never made a mistake, it means they've either never done anything or they're lying.
Run for the hills. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then that's, for me, being able to be relatable and share those mistakes and share the places where I had fear and shame and didn't want to get caught in my, pretending that I had it all together when I didn't.
Right.
We've all been there.
Sure.
At some point.
Yeah, I mean, you, in fact, I think I was reading in some of your stuff. You kind of share a story, I guess, where you were, I guess it was a business lunch with somebody, and you had a couple of credit cards declined.
Yeah. Oh my God, that was so painful. Yeah, it was actually when I was out of college for a couple of years. I was going for my license, and I met. Thankfully, it was a friend, and I wanted to repay him for putting me up to stay with him for a month and a half and all these things. Took him out to lunch. Credit card declined. And he's like, let me get lunch. I'm like, no, I got this. I have another card. Basically went through 3 credit cards, all declined. And then I said, look, let me write you a check because it's strapped a little bit right now, but I'm going to write you a check. I bounced the check. I mean, but I couldn't just let it go and let him pay. And my ego kept saying, no, I gotta figure this out. And, it was embarrassing. He was forgiving. But it reminded me of those places where my ego gets the better of me sometimes instead of just saying graciously, thank you. Thanks for helping me.
So from the financial world, is it primarily you have a CPA practice? Is that what is it you do?
Yeah, so I do. So my main staple, my bread and butter is the accounting practice. And from there, I was able to then I started doing workshops and I coach people, but a lot of my referrals and all that come through the tax practice. And that's where I'm able to give guidance to people and people recommend me out. But I also do coaching. I do teach workshops. COVID has sort of thrown things off a little bit.
Sure.
I do a lot of speaking engagements and work with people. But really, my mission has been, and I love doing taxes. I'm probably one of those weird people. But my bigger mission is really having these conversations around money and helping people to let go of financial blocks and beliefs they've been holding on to that don't serve them.
Yeah, we don't learn this stuff in school. Most of us don't get it from families growing up, this financial literacy stuff. We just don't get taught.
We just don't. And, I've been on a few shows where they say, well, gosh, I can't believe your parents did that to you. Well, it has nothing to do with that. This isn't about blaming anybody. The reality is most of us aren't taught that. And if you're fortunate to have had parents or people in your life that were able to model that, fantastic. That's not the majority. That's not my experience. Most people, the parents didn't know, or there was shame or whatever, ego, and we just don't have these conversations.
Yeah, it's very, very common. I find the same thing. So, folks, I'm going to encourage you to stay tuned in the next segment. We're going to share some more interesting insights from Bob, and I think we're going to have some fun. So stay tuned.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show, and today we have a very special guest, Bob Wheeler. He is one of those people that you just don't find. He's a humorous CPA. So I thought you'd get a kick out of that, Bob. Welcome to the show.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
Great to be here. Unfortunately, my peers don't always have a sense of humor.
That's an understatement. So, Bob, of course, if you missed the first segment, I'm going to encourage you to go back to our website, yourpersonalbank.com. You can listen to this or any of the previously recorded shows. Bob shares a little bit of his background and how he got here, but You really, Bob, you kind of help people understand the emotions about money better. Is that a good way to put it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's trying to help people understand how emotions like underpin their relationship and where they're sabotaging. And even though they're looking at things and saying, well, this is really practical, understanding that there's these hidden beliefs, this hidden mindset that's actually taking us potentially further from our goals or what we say they are.
Okay. And then you've also written a book and you have a podcast. Share those things with us if somebody wanted to get more information.
Absolutely. So the website is The Money Nerve, not nerd. I'm a money nerd, but themoneynerve.com will take you to the website and give you resources. It will take you to the book. It'll take you to the podcast. The podcast is Money You Should Ask. We also have an online course called Mastering the Emotions of Money. And really, it's all about helping people on their financial journey, their emotional financial journey, to understanding where we take ourselves out. And the reason I use the word nerve is because money experiences can be visceral, right? If I get a bonus I wasn't expecting, I win the lottery, I have this euphoric, like, oh my God, I just got this surprise. If I have my credit card turned down 3 times at the restaurant, or my bank account is overdrawn, that sinking feeling or that, that pit in your stomach of like, I think I'm going to get nauseous. It's all visceral. And so I really wanted to connect that piece when I talk about money.
Yeah, I think we've all been through many of those experiences as you discussed, and I've got one that's so powerful. You were mentioning about couples, working together or trying to figure out how to work together on money, and many people, we all know that number one cause of divorce is money issues, right?
Yeah.
I have a couple, for example, I sat down with very common, and they were looking at investing in different options in terms of risk, how risk tolerance, that kind of stuff. And I could tell there was a real dichotomy here. Okay. So this is something I've used over the years. I took 2 pieces of paper, gave one to each partner. And I said, write down the percentage of how much of your portfolio, your total investments, you think should be at risk and how much should be safe. And then give each other the answer. So one wrote 75%, the other wrote 25%. They gave it to each other, and then they started. The wife says, "Oh, you mean 75% safe?" He said, "No, 75% at risk." And then they proceeded to argue. And I felt like a referee. After a bit, I had to time out. Literally, I was like, time out. I could tell this was a long-standing, ongoing argument. And I said, is it fair that you guys are married, you're a couple, you each have strengths and weaknesses, and is it fair to say maybe you're you're looking at a little too much risk, and looking at the wife, maybe it's you're a little bit too security focused, and maybe somewhere in the middle it might be the right balance for you guys? And that's what we ended up doing.
Well, and what's so interesting about what you just said, what the piece that I heard was, most people think a money conversation is a money conflict. They think that when you say, let's talk about money, they mean, let's have an argument. And getting people to actually be able to stay in a difficult conversation and actually talk about the fear about too much risk or the scarcity mindset that says, no, we got to save everything just in case we lose it, and then checking to see how true that is, or if that's just a mainly irrational fear. Not that there isn't the possibility of losing stuff, but a lot of times our story is, we've so well crafted our story, and it's actually pretty far from reality, but we're working off of that story.
Right. What would you recommend to because I run into this so often, a couple where they're not on the same page like that? What would you recommend for them?
Well, I usually actually go back to, where are you on the same page? And what is, and why are we having this conversation about money and where we want to go with it? Are you on the same page about legacy? Are you on the same page about buying a new home, sending the kids to college? Like, where are we on the same page? And then why am I going this direction to get there? Because maybe we are on the same page about money for college,
right?
But I have a belief that no, kids must get a scholarship and nobody can pay. They must pay for it on their own. You know, that was my grandparents. Like, we don't help you. You have to figure it out. And then she or they might be saying, well, it's got to be this way. All right, so we just have to come up with a solution that satisfies both of us and doesn't trigger us. But maybe the bigger goal is actually we have a shared vision on that. And so to just actually go through what's the fears about it, I love doing, I'm an accountant, so cost benefit. What's the cost of not investing the money emotionally? And what's the benefit? I get to play it safe. Nobody can judge me if I'm successful. And so emotionally, what's the cost benefit of not working on my money and growing it and letting it serve me instead of me serving my money?
That's very powerful. That's strong. Because, yeah, it's so much more than just the dollars and cents of it. You know what I mean?
Well, it is. And I hear this sometimes, our self-worth is not our net worth, and we get confused. I was very confused about that. I was socialized that I am my accomplishments. So I needed to make sure I was interesting, and I made sure I had to go to a great college, and I had to, make a certain amount of money, or I didn't have anything to bring to the table. And we're so much more than that.
Right.
But many of us have been taught that, that is our value.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, a lot of times, especially guys, but ladies do the same thing. It's when you first meet somebody, what do you always usually say? Oh, what do you do for a living? Right?
That's right. We start comparing pretty immediately who's got the bigger tool, right? The bigger car, the bigger whatever.
It's either that or sports typically, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Those are the safe topics. And, so many people identify by what they do versus who they are.
Right. And it's natural. I did a workshop where we weren't allowed to say what we did. We were only allowed to say our name. And it was so difficult having to spend a few days with people and not saying, what do you do? Oh, well, I do that too. Or, my job's better than yours, or whatever it might be. It changes the conversation.
That would be an interesting experiment. Like you said, meeting a bunch of new people, but not being able to tell them what you do.
Right. And then you make all these assumptions and then find out, wait, what? They're a school teacher. Oh, I thought they were an attorney, or I thought, right? Because we make all these assumptions every day. We're making micro judgments and assessing our situations with everybody we meet.
Right. That's really cool. Well, folks, we're having fun here with Bob Wheeler. He is a special guest. Like I said, he's going to be with us in the next segment, so I'm going to really encourage you to stay tuned because Bob has some very interesting and unique insights, and hey, we're having some fun, so stay tuned.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show, and we have a special guest, Bob Wheeler. And Bob he's a CPA by trade, but he actually has a very unique and interesting insight about the emotions of money. He's been sharing some of those insights. If you missed them, what we've been sharing, let's go back to yourpersonalbank.com. You can listen to this or any of the previously recorded shows and catch that. But during the break, Bob was just starting to share with me a very interesting story that he had. So I want you to share that with our listeners. Go ahead, Bob. Welcome back to the show.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great being here. Love this conversation. And I'll admit, when I went into accounting because 2 + 2 is 4. It's logical. There's nothing to be challenged. 2 + 2 is 4, and I could live with that. I loved that kind of system. But I was talking to my editor when I started writing the book, and she said, Bob, that's great. You're writing a book about money and emotions, but most of us actually don't deal with money emotionally. We make our decisions very practically. And I said, okay, well, hey, let me ask you a question. When you go out to lunch with your dad, who pays for lunch? And she said, oh, well, my dad does. I'm his princess. I said, oh, okay. Well, who pays for lunch when you go out with your mom? She goes, oh, well, I do because, my dad left my mom and I feel so bad for her because she's just this poor little woman that I have to take care of. And I said, okay. And who pays for lunch when you go out with your sister? She goes, oh, well, we go 50-50 because oh, okay, I get it. Never mind.
There is a lot of emotion wrapped up in money, in everyday things.
Absolutely. It's even as simple as, am I going to buy lunch with my coworkers or embarrass myself because I brought my lunch? Now, me, I'm going to embarrass myself. I bring my lunch. I bring my lunch a lot, and I save a lot of money. But those are the kinds of things where we feel pressured to have that second drink or take the trip with friends, even though we know we can't afford it, because we're trying to parlay success to those around us, instead of just being honest and going, you know what, it's not my budget this week. I'm saving for a house.
There you go. Yeah, it's the keeping up with the Joneses, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
So prevalent. I remember when I was younger, earlier in my career, I would sometimes meet with clients in their homes, and it was funny. I would be in a nicer part of town in a beautiful home, and so often, there would be a room or two with no furniture in it, right? And I would foolishly ask the question, oh, you guys just move in? And now we've been here 2, 3, 5 years, whatever. I would be in a less nice part of town and, of course, fully furnished. Everything's there. They pay cash. I mean, it was no issue. I quickly realized these were people that were buying more home than they could afford.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny how we do that because we want everybody. I have clients that will tell me, oh, we just spent $100,000 on a new kitchen. And I'll say, oh, my God, that's amazing. You must love to cook. Oh, we don't cook. I've never cooked. But it looks really cool when our friends come over.
Right.
Gosh, I could think of other ways to impress my friends and spend $100,000 on a kitchen remodel.
Right. Yeah, it's one of those workshops I've done over the years, and I've shared this topic, similar to what you just said, the 80-10-10 rule, I call it. It's where you live on 80% and you give away 10% and you put away 10%, right?
Right.
And it's not a very popular topic.
It's not, and even saying 80%, right, is in this day and age, I would probably say try and live on 60%, put 20% in savings, give away 10%, and that other 10% is for fun. But it's really hard for people to get in that mindset of, let me pay myself first, let me live within my means. It's so much less pressure when you live within your means.
It is.
It's easier said than done for sure. And I was one of those people that kept saying, no, I know I tell other people to do this, but like I have this situation and I've got this reason. And so I justified putting off the obvious because I just wasn't ready to deal with it. And my mindset wasn't in the right place because I still believed, I still kept going, wow, how did I get here? I'm so lucky. I still didn't believe, and this occasionally still happens when I'm looking at a client's assets and I'm all this stuff, and I'm like, oh, they've got 2 houses, and they're making, that's a nice amount of income to be making. Gosh, I wish, oh, that is me. I am doing that, right? But I forget, life has been pretty good to me. I've worked hard, and it didn't happen overnight, but I forget sometimes that my financial situation has dramatically changed from 20 years ago.
So what would you recommend to somebody who was maybe dealing with that issue where they, I guess, realizing they're maybe not living in their means? I mean, we got inflation hitting us now. It's going to be hitting more and more people, right? What do you recommend?
Well, that's why I think it's really important to sit down and actually do your own financial sheet. Like list out your assets for a couple of reasons. It's a great way to list out all your bank accounts and everything so that eventually if you decide to transition on, your heirs can go, oh, here's all the bank accounts. We don't have to run around. But I think putting together a balance sheet and actually listing out, oh, that's right, there's a house with equity. Oh, I do have a 401k, or I've got life insurance, or I've got a brokerage account or multiple brokerage accounts. And actually start to realize, I'm actually doing better than my sad story about how I'm such a victim.
Yeah.
I'm actually doing okay. And so for me, it's about
I'm going to have to cut Bob.
The story.
Bob, I'm going to have to cut you off here because we got a hard break. When we come back, I'll let Bob finish that thought because I think that's a big issue, especially today. So stay tuned.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. We have Bob Wheeler with us, and it's been very interesting. Bob has very unique insight, a humorous one even, about emotions and money. He's also a CPA. I'm going to encourage you, if you missed the previous part of the show, of course, go to yourpersonalbank.com, and you can listen to this or any of the previously recorded shows. But again, Bob, thank you again. Welcome to the show, or welcome back.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we were just talking about story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really an important thing, is to figure out what is our story about our finances, because I think often we have such a sad victim story about our finances, and when we actually sit down and look at our numbers, for the most part, we're actually in a better place than we thought we were. I know that was true for me, but one of the things that happened, and we were talking about this in the break, a lot of my clients freaked out when the pandemic first started. People called me up saying, we're going to go out of, we can't, we live paycheck to paycheck. And even though we're making $300,000 or $400,000, we're going to fail. And what people discovered, or a lot of my clients discovered, is that they were actually a lot more resilient than they thought they were.
Mm-hmm.
They obviously stopped eating out. They stopped doing things that they were normally just spending money and not thinking about it. And all of a sudden, a lot of my clients were coming back saying, hey, we actually have this handled. We actually do have money in the bank. I had one client in particular. She had been lamenting how terrible it was going to be. And when I actually told her what her tax bill was going to be, I said, I know you're telling me this sad story, but on paper you actually did really well, and you're going to owe all this money. And then she, after I can't afford it. Well, actually, you know what? We actually had an amazing year, and we actually have $500,000 in the bank.
Right.
I just didn't want to part with it. I'm like, okay, well, that's a different story, but you're actually doing well.
Yeah, I in fact, since you brought that up, Bob, I can bring up a personal example. With COVID, we with our business, we had all these offices and everything else. Well, of course, everybody's working from home, and my leases came up, and nobody had been in the office for 6 months, and I'm thinking, why am I paying for all this? So we've gone to fully remote, right? And of course, when I got my taxes done and everything, this just happened recently. I was complaining to my CPA because I'm like, I've never had to pay that much in taxes. He goes, well, you wiped out all those expenses.
Right.
I said, yeah, you're right. I just didn't want to have to pay all that.
But and what you're talking about, I have this conversation all the time. I just had it with somebody yesterday who said, well, I know I'm going to get all this extra money, but I'm going to have to pay tax on it, so I'd rather not make the extra money. And I'm like, okay, this is a bad mindset, people. You still have more money.
Right.
After you pay the tax, you still have more money. Well, make the extra money, pay the tax.
Well, and it's interesting you bring up the emotions, how strong they are, because, you understand, I've been working with clients for 22 years, telling them that very thing, them complaining to me because they're paying more taxes. I'm like, no, that's actually a good thing. It means you made more. And then here I find myself not a few weeks ago making the same complaint to my own CPA.
That's right, because it's this information is for the other people, not for me. My story's unique.
I quickly reverted back and realized what I was doing, but it's amazing how strongly, I guess, those emotions are built into all of us, even those of us that deal with money on a daily basis, right?
Well, absolutely. And I think, one of the things that I talk about that I think is so important is, even as you get to know yourself, you may not change everything, right? I still have certain reactions. When I talk to the IRS, I get really angry sometimes because I just think, oh, my God, these people are so stupid. That's my own thing, right? Mm-hmm. But I find I get triggered, and so I have a staff member talk to the IRS who's a lot more pleasant, and I get better results. It doesn't mean I fix everything.
Right.
I still tap into sometimes my scarcity mindset. Mm-hmm. I grew up in a big family. We didn't have a lot of money.
Right.
And so I feel really comfortable if I've got 6 months worth of food in my pantry. Mm-hmm. And people are like, Bob, are you opening a restaurant? And I'm like, no, it's just comforting myself, right? I don't have to beat myself up. I just know 6 months worth of food makes me really happy.
Well, and you brought that up. Over Christmas break, we spent some time with some relatives who, I'm half Hungarian, and they came from hungry, lived in communism when they were younger, and food was scarce. And I mean, you opened her pantry, you can't go into a pantry; it's just full of food. And my wife mentioned something. I said, "Well," I said to her, think about it. Think about what she grew up. That's probably still, she's retired now, but still, when she was a kid, food was scarce. Today, you can't see her pantry because it's so full of food.
Yeah, and that reminds me, a client of mine, he went to visit his mom, his grandmother in Poland, and they had also grown up with a lot of scarcity, and there was a piece of meat in there that looked really rancid, and he threw it out. And his grandmother was so distraught because she's like, well, it's still a piece of meat. I could have somehow salvaged it. You just threw it. Like, everything was so precious to her that even, a semi-rotting piece of meat still gave her some comfort because it was better than nothing.
Right.
And we come from such a different mindset, or the bar is so much higher of like, oh, everybody has food access and can go into 22 different grocery stores and pick 8,000 different brands of stuff, and that's not true for a lot of the world.
Right. And I guess going back to that thought I was saying before is, even we as advisors or folks who work with money on a regular basis with clients, we're not immune to these emotional things either. They affect us sometimes too. We're human beings.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I got a quick story on that. So one of my agents had been with me for a number of years, worked with our company, and I remember after I had an agent training meeting, and then he came into me and he said something. He goes, I just realized something. At that point, he'd been working with us for about 3 years. He goes, I've never really ever done a large case. And he goes, today, something you said made me realize why. He goes, every Sunday after church, my parents, when he was growing up, would go drive to the nice part of town and point at this house. They say, see those people? They ripped off so-and-so to get that house. They go to the next one. You see those people? They took advantage of da-da-da, and that's how they got their place. And they do this his parents did this every Sunday.
Wow.
Yeah, and he goes, I realize I have a issue. What was interesting was the next week he did his first big case.
Wow. Well, it's so interesting you talk about that, because one of the things when I do a workshop, I'll ask people who wants to be rich, right? And rich can be anything, but I just say who wants to be rich, and everybody's got their hand up.
Sure.
And right, but through the workshop, I'll start to ask, what do you think of rich people? Oh, rich people are evil. Rich people are okay, but you're trying to be this person, right? So you're already in conflict because you have all these projections about what rich people are, and yet you want to be rich. And so there's this big conflict that we really have to internally work out to say, yeah, it's actually okay. And, if you're a religious person, your God would want you to be successful. That is like bringing it. And instead of saying that, oh, you must be poor and you must be destitute to be a good person.
Right.
You're a good person. Money either amplifies your goodness or your badness, I think.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, poor people can't help poor people generally. And it's a tool, but it's hard to get. Sometimes it's hard to get it's hard to get around your mind, your mindset around that, and really live that. You know what I mean? So,
absolutely. And for me, when I look at all of this stuff, what it boils down to for me is actually finding gratitude in everything, and actually being able to say, "Wow, I'm grateful for the journey that I've had. I'm grateful for what I do have," and really just seeing gratitude in the smallest things. Having hot water come out of my shower tap, grateful.
Well, when you don't have it, you're certainly grateful. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really liked something you were sharing on your podcast that you did, I think in the earlier segments, when you're talking about you have successful people share their failures. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
Why do you do that?
Here's the thing. We all have made mistakes, right? We all, for the most part, we all want to get ahead. We want to be the best version of ourselves. And even if that means posing or pretending. And so being able to talk with people like Dr. John D. Martini, who's an incredibly successful person, who talks about these places where he was a complete failure, where everybody said he was a complete idiot. He would never amount to anything. And then having to take that pain and deciding whether that was going to define him or if he was going to actually change the narrative of his life. Like that, to me, is incredibly, incredibly inspiring, you know, to hear those stories and say, you know what, they made lots of mistakes and they have made it. That can be the truth for me as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So if somebody wanted to get more information, where should they contact you, Bob?
So themoneynerve.com is the website. Info@themoneynerve.com is the email. And you can reach out about our accounting services, about the online course, about the podcast, about the book, about one-on-one coaching. Once COVID is over, we'll be back to doing workshops. And I do speaking engagements for different brokerage houses and other audiences. And so, yeah, just reach out, and I'm always happy to connect with people. I love being able to help people master their lives.
That's awesome, because I think you're really onto something, Bob, because again, with my 20 plus years of experience working with, hundreds and hundreds of clients, there's so many that are not where they should be, and it's because, well, their own self-limitations is the reason.
Absolutely. And you probably know this as well as I do because you're in this field, but
right.
Most people want to leave a legacy. Most people have dreams of creating some kind of charitable organization or paying it forward. And for a lot of people, they just stay dreams because they're afraid to actually name it or go for it. But almost every person I come across wants to leave the world a better place, wants to leave their legacy, wants to leave some goodness behind, and then we get in our own ways.
And you could help them kind of navigate that, I guess, is what you're trying to say.
We would love to try and help with you know, I'm no expert, but I've been around. I've had a lot of experiences, and we have a lot to offer if it resonates with people. That
sounds great. And I would say, you know, Bob has a kind of, like you said, a bit of a humorous take on things, and and that's extraordinarily rare in the CPA world.
Well, you know, we got to be able to laugh. And
right.
For me, laughter and telling humorous stories with clients is a great way to disarm them. And I can tell them a story about somebody else, and then they'll laugh and say, "Oh, that's me. I get it." Right now, I didn't even see the connection.
Well, Bob, I'll say this: if you can make taxes fun, you have really accomplished something.
Oh, well, you got to have fun. I actually enjoy taxes, so for me, they're fun and sometimes funny.
That is probably something I've never heard before. I'll have to admit. Those two words in the same sentence.
Yeah.
So
we're an odd bunch. We're an odd bunch.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So we're going to be running out of time here shortly. Is there any other thoughts or anything else Bob, you would want to leave with our listeners with? Any thoughts?
I would just say for people out there that want more, that feel like that there's something else out there, is do the work. Figure out what you want. Figure out what your life goals are, and then adjust your spending habit to be in integrity with what you say your lifelong goals are. And you will have a much happier life, and you will actually get there. You've got to set the goals and go for them.
Well, those are some inspiring and encouraging words, that's for certain. So, Bob, one more time, share your information, how folks can contact you for more information.
Absolutely. It's themoneynerve, NERVE.com, moneynerve.com. You can check out the book, the podcast. We've got lots of free resources, the accounting and CPA work. We do a lot of tax strategy for people, and just feel free to connect, and we'll be happy to respond back.
And that was one last thing I almost forgot to ask you. What would be a good candidate for a good client, for somebody that should reach out to you?
Anybody that feels like there's more to it, and they haven't unraveled the secret, or even just a business person that doesn't feel like they're getting the love from their CPA. We look to the future. We're not just looking at how to save money this year. We're actually looking at big picture. And so anybody out there that likes money, wants more money, we can help you out.
Or if you just want to do your taxes and get have a laugh while you're doing it, right?
Exactly.
That'd be a rather unique experience. That'd be great. Well, Bob, again, thank you for joining us on the Your Personal Bank show, and it's been a pleasure, and I think your message is unique and fun. What can I say?
Well, absolutely. Well, I so appreciate being on the show and having the opportunity to chat about money and emotions, and I just hope your audience out there keeps going for it, keeps investing, and keeps being conscious around their money choices.
I think they will. Thank you for joining the show. Thanks, Bob.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. This show is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information. The presenter and guest on this program do not engage in legal, accounting, or tax advice. Professional advice regarding your situation should be sought if required. Products and riders may have limitations and may not be available in all states. Excessive unpaid loans may affect performance. Distributions may become taxable if not managed properly. Replacements may not be suitable for everyone. There may be charges when replacing coverage. Compare when considering a replacement. Dividend rates and baseline of credit rates may change. Contact yourpersonalbank.com for current rates.